Hi, and welcome back to this week's podcast episode of Web3 Compass. Today I'm going to talk about the network state. In my podcast episode with Niall, he told me about Balaji Srinivasan, sorry if I pronounce the name wrong, who wrote a book called The Network State. And before I talk about the concept of a network state, I want to give you some background on Balaji. He holds a PhD from Stanford. He founded and sold a company which does genomic screens for $375 million. He founded at least two more companies, one of them called Earn.com, which was, as far as I know, sold to Coinbase, where he also was the CTO. He's an early investor in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies, and he's a thought leader in the Web3 space. He has some extremely interesting podcast episodes with, for example, Lex Fridman and Tim Ferriss, where he also talks about other concepts, which I can really recommend you, but today I really want to talk about the network state. You can also download the book of the network state free on the website. I will link it in the show notes. Before I talk about the concept, I think it is very important to know what a state is. And there's a convention, the 1933 Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. And here it says basically four aspects are necessary for a state. First, a permanent population. Second, a defined territory. Third, a government. And fourth, the capacity to enter relations with other states. So Balaji also has some very good talks, which are only 15 minutes long, where you can also see in a short version how or what a network state is. And also in the book, there's the network state in one sentence, and I want to cite it. And here it says, a network state is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition from pre-existing states. So, and in his talks, he says that starting new countries is possible, preferable, and profitable. When he talks about that it is possible, he mentions that we were able to start new companies such as Google, new communities such as Facebook, and new currencies such as Bitcoin. And then he says it will also be possible to create or to start network states. It has the principle cloud first and land second. For example, a network state starts from members from two different cities, let's say Munich and maybe London. And we have two people in each city. And the people share the same beliefs and they share the same values. And at first, they are a community. The community grows and it grows bigger and bigger. And then maybe they have like, let's say, a tax or something like that, or a membership model, and the community acquires land, let's say in London, and then they establish, for example, a community center. And also talking about that network states are possible, Balaji mentions that most countries are small countries. If you have, for example, a community with 1 million members, there are, of course, some countries which are definitely smaller. And also the UN membership has grown over time. Then he also states that with sufficient traction, diplomatic recognition becomes possible. And to the second part, that network states are preferable, he says that powerless people have an alternative to failed states. And I think in his talk, he also gives the example of Venezuela. If you are a smart person living in Venezuela, the outside circumstances are really working against you, and it's extremely difficult to become successful. He also says that ambitious people have now an alternative in frontier societies. I thought at this point of something I read, and I think it's from Nassim Taleb. I didn't found it again, but I think he said that nationality is a bias. And this is quite a controversial statement. And as I said before, I'm not really sure if it is from Nassim Taleb, but I read here the example that for example, I have not so much in common with, let's say, a 65-year-old woman living next door to me who already had two children. And here maybe important to know I'm 22 years old and I don't have any children. And probably the woman has different hobbies, different interests. Also probably different values. And I think this is very important, that I think in today's society, as let's say a state, for example, Germany, the values differ. The values differ greatly. If you have the whole political party, so let's also take the USA. It's very torn apart, and there you have the two parties, and I think it's polarizing into two extremes. And now let's take, for example, let's say a 22-year-old man living in Brazil. He studied business administration and now works for a tech company in maybe a business role like sales, or I don't know, product management, or whatever you want to describe as a business role. He probably shares more values with me than I share with, for example, the 65-year-old woman. And very interesting, I think, is if you look at, for example, African states, and you know how the borders were created. You know that there are some geopolitical problems, and the country or the citizens are not so homogeneous, because you have, for example, different groups, different religions, and also different values. But I think in today's age, also a lot of Western countries, as I said before, with the USA, their beliefs and values, they also differ greatly. And I think the USA started, for example, with the same founding values, which I think is also one reason why they become so strong. But over time, a nation might become torn. And so I don't totally agree with the statement nationality is a bias, because I still care about, let's say, my country and also the people living in it, and also about the community here in the city where I live. But I think it's very interesting to really reflect on why do you identify with the other people in the country. And then I thought, for example, let's see like cultural values, like for example art or food, and all these aspects. But also food, I mean, I really like also the Italian cuisine, or the Spanish, or let's say also Asian food. And when you have like a network state, you probably have people who have much more in common than if you have now a country like, let's say, Germany. And also lastly, he states that network states can become profitable when you take the revenue per user. It is definitely possible to have like a higher revenue per user than, let's say, other small states which are existing today. And now just imagine if you have, for example, like a tax or a membership fee, and then you have like, you build community centers in all over the globe. And in the book, it also says that then you become, or you also have like physical nodes, and you can also develop your own culture, your own art, your own architecture. And maybe the most important thing, in my opinion, is that you really only might accept people in your community, in your state, who want to be part of this community. If you take Germany and you take, for example, political interest or interest in the state and in the well-being, you have a lot of people who are volunteering in some activities, but you also have a lot of people who don't really care, who only care about themselves. And I think if you create a new state and you have people who really want to be part of the state, who really want to contribute, the connection between the people living in the state might be definitely stronger. And also people can really choose of which state they want to be a part of. And yeah, here in Germany, we have like an influencer, you probably could describe him, called Finn Kliman. And recently he got, let's say, in some scandals involved, and quite complex, but I don't want to talk about this now. I want to talk about something he called Klimansland, which is, as far as I know, like a huge area of land where people from his community could go and create something. So they had like all kinds of different fun activities, like a dirt bike racing track or a pool and like an old school bus. And there were people coming there, and they also celebrated some parties there. And I thought the concept is very interesting. And if you have this, for example, in one country, and in the end you have like an international community. He was a German influencer, but if you speak, for example, English, and you have like a worldwide community, you could have these places all over the globe, maybe like a religion or like an ethnic group. And also this is also in the book, that the comparison is also in the book. And I mean, let's take a church. They have maybe churches all over the globe, and people come there and they come to the community centers. And now let's extend it to maybe a state, like a network state. And I think it is very interesting because the concept might be meritocratic. And I want to cite here from Wikipedia because they have like a good definition what meritocracy is. It says meritocracy is the notion of a political system in which economic goods and or political power are vested in individual people based on talent, effort, and achievement rather than wealth or social class. And I think in today's society, the Western world, many people have an advantage compared to people from the rest of the world, only because they are born in the countries they were born in. It's a little bit like inheriting wealth or money, right? And you don't have the smartest people, maybe not the smartest people become part of a state, but people who just have luck, who are lucky to be born, for example, in Germany or the USA. And I think this is very interesting because a lot of talent in other countries is, how do you say it, remains undiscovered and also not used, and is not fostered. And yeah, I think this is very interesting. On the other hand, also I have some other thoughts. What happens with weak people? Let's say you create a state and you have there a lot of people who are quite smart, who are very well educated, or very skilled, maybe in another profession, but however smart. And what happens with those who might not be so smart, or those who have like serious disabilities, or had very bad circumstances? Who takes care of the weak? And this is something I think is also very important to ask in the whole creating new states debate, also with sea stating, where people are talking about creating new states on sea. If those new states will be selective, I think it's necessary to ask who takes care of the weak, and who pays also the taxes. And I personally, I don't want to be too political, but I think a society should also be measured about how they care about the weakest. And yeah, however, the concept I think is extremely interesting. And also Balaji, I really want to consume more content of him. I also don't have finished the whole book. There are so many concepts I really have to dig in and really read through it. I can only recommend it, and I mean it's free. And also the network as a source of truth. I think this is so interesting. If everything is protocoled on, for example, the blockchain, there you have like a truth and cannot be changed, or maybe you can also reverse some things, but if you construct it that the truth cannot be changed, I think this is extremely interesting, because today the winner always writes the history. And yeah, lastly, I think diplomatic recognition will be extremely hard, because if you have, for example, a state where a lot of the elite will be part of, I think it will be hard that countries which are currently wealthy will accept it and have it more or less as a competitor to their state model. And yeah, I really want to hear your thoughts on the concept of a network state. I will also link the Discord. Maybe we can get more traction into the Discord. And yeah, have a nice day. And I hope to meet you in person at some point of time, and have a great day. Cheers.